Hi, I'm Rob Grimm with RGG EDU, and today we're sitting down with Michael Woloszynowicz, which is the hardest name I've ever had to say.
You nailed it. No, you nailed it.
All right, that's good. That's a difficult name.
It's a tough one.
Anyway, we're just wrapping up 3 days of shooting with Michael. We've been working on his tutorial. It's really been a pleasure to watch. I got to tell you, working with you has been terrific. You're setting a high bar for all other instructors to come with our tutorials. First of all, let's talk about your background.
Sure.
I think that's one of the things that people really like to know is how you got started, because a lot of people are struggling and wanting to get into the business. So kind of walk us through your history of photography, when you started, when it really clicked for you.
Yeah. So it was probably, I was maybe like 10 or 12 when I first picked up a camera. Just shooting mostly landscapes. I mean, you know, just kind of going out with my dad. We're out in the Rockies, you know, shooting stuff. And so did that for about a year or two. But every time I got the photos back.
This is back in the film days.
This is back in the film days, yeah.
What kind of camera?
It was an EOS 1, Canon EOS 1 actually, yeah. So
you still have it somewhere?
I do. It's actually still sitting at home. Still works. I mean.
My first one is sitting up there on the shelf.
Nice.
It's cool.
But yeah, so I mean, I did that for about 2 years, just, you know, kind of shooting some landscapes. But every time I kind of sent them out for development, I got them back. I just was kind of underwhelmed with what I got. And I don't know, I just somehow never got into the darkroom thing. So just kind of gave it up, I think, after a while.
You never pursued the darkroom?
No.
So you were sending off images, being processed, getting them back, and were the results flat, just not interesting?
Well, I mean, I think for me too, it's, I don't know, what I love about digital is that kind of gives me some guidance as far as like how I'm going to build my vision around that photo. Whereas there, I don't know, it was, I think partially I didn't have enough understanding too about photography to really, you know, make sure to get a great image out of camera. So I don't think I just really dedicated myself enough at that point. It wasn't just, you know, the development, but, you know, I was young, and so it was something I enjoyed tinkering with, and then I decided, you know, this maybe isn't for me. But then many years later, I think it was probably about 3 years ago, I picked up my dad's Nikon D300, and for no real reason, actually. I think I was just like browsing through. He gave me like the 500px app on his iPad.
Is your dad a photographer? It sounds like he's always had a camera.
Yeah, I mean, he's not like a professional photographer or anything like that. He's a structural engineer, but he enjoys the process of, you know, photography. So
mathematical mind. Yeah. Photography is a very mathematical business, actually.
Yeah, and I'm like my computer science background as well, right? So again, you know, a lot of math and things like that. So very analytical. But yeah, so, you know, picked that up, and I was just browsing through 500px, and I was just amazed at, like, you know, what you could do these days. It kind of just never really dawned on me on how great, you know, the images are looking these days. I always thought that, you know, digital, it's not going to look that great. So I started playing around with his camera, just, you know, shooting some portraits with like speed lights, and just took it out, you know, in streets of Toronto, was just shooting some stuff there, and gradually I just noticed the images becoming more and more interesting. And then I realized essentially that if I want them to look really great, I have to become good at Photoshop. So
the images became more interesting. Is that because you started to see that your eye was developing and you were getting a better sense of composition? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was kind of lots of things all at once. I think, you know, I started to understand the possibilities with digital as well. Before that, like, it was just kind of like point and shoot type stuff. You know, I had like a small Canon. I would just, you know, nonchalantly photograph things while I was on vacation or whatever, but never really gave it much thought, right? So once I started seeing these images, I'm like, wow, I'd really love to produce stuff like that. So then I started getting more interested in it, and, you know, reading up on it, and actually just going out just purely to shoot for no other reason, or traveling just to shoot. And you know, like I said, at the same time, I was developing my skills in Photoshop, trying to see what I can do with these images, how I can push them, and, you know, how I can blend multiple exposures together to create something that's a little bit more interesting. So I think my start was probably more in like architecture and cityscapes and stuff like that, but somehow I really enjoyed lighting subjects. I really enjoyed kind of playing around with lighting and seeing, you know, what it can do. So again, I had really basic gear at that time. It was like, you know, a speed light and a little Lastilite box. So, you know, the results weren't great, but I could just kind of see things getting gradually better and better. And that just kind of kicked things off for me.
It sounds like Photoshop was almost hand in hand, if not slightly in the lead, for you in the development of your photography skills. Like, you started to get some nice results, but then needed to push them in Photoshop.
Right, yeah, I think it was. I mean, it really, part of the reason why I was photographing too was to have something that I can edit off of, right? So the two were kind of pushing each other a little bit. But I think I really enjoyed the process of retouching images. I mean, you know, again, I never really gave Photoshop much thought. I kind of opened it up a couple times, seemed way too complicated. I'm just like, forget this, you know. So I left it alone. But I finally realized, you know, I got to get good at this. So I was just, again, watching.
So how did you get good?
Just kind of watching the odd thing on the internet, just kind of trying to piece together what's going on in there. And then a lot of it was just experimentation as well. I mean, ultimately, once you kind of figure out where things are, as with most things with computers, you just click on a bunch of stuff and see what happens.
Photoshop is a beast. It's a beast not because it's a beast because it's so damn powerful. And there are 200 ways to do the same thing.
That's just it, yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So having a computer sciences background must have really helped you. Did you work in the computer sciences field? Like, what did you do?
Yeah, I did. I was a software developer. So,
you were?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're, writing web applications and things like that. So I think it does help because you kind of don't...
No, it's a language.
Yeah, and you don't just understand you're not thinking about the tool of what the result is, but you're also thinking about how is it actually working. Because I took image processing and stuff like that, as courses back in college. So,
okay.
I kind of have an idea of what's going on behind the scenes. So I think it does help. And I've just generally always been good with computers, so just always felt.
So all your Photoshop skills were effectively self-taught on the web. You went out on the web and you were looking at other instructors and picking up little YouTube videos on how to do this and how that. Yeah. Was there anybody that really stood out in your mind as an instructor that guy's got the goods? Or was it a combination of so many different people that you really kind of developed
it was a combination of little pieces, I think. Back when, even 3 years ago, I think photography education wasn't that great. I don't know, it always seemed to me you see the images that the instructor's producing and you're like, I don't know if that's really something that I like, or you'd watch a tutorial and you're like, that's kind of weird what they're doing with the skin. So I would kind of take those tutorials at face value and just kind of look at them and see what they're doing, and then just try and apply my own spin to it and just kind of gradually refine.
There are two touchstones that you really just hit upon in the last couple sentences. And one is, retouching is a very difficult thing, and people don't always do it well. They can get some interesting kind of eye candy results, but they're not necessarily good results. And going back to the cameras, I think one of the frustrations that you were feeling is you're working with a camera and it's taking pretty good pictures, but until you really learn to harness the power that's inside of the camera. The cameras today are incredibly powerful,
exactly.
But they are, like Photoshop, they are a tool. And unless you know how to use that tool, you're not going to get great results. And that's one of the things that's really interesting about video tutorials now. It really we now have the ability to really teach people how to harness the power of those tools and go out and make great images, but spend some time with it.
Yeah, and the challenge too is usually it's little fragments here and there, right? You don't see that process start to finish, so you kind of get a little window into what's going on. And a lot of the tutorials too, they're not you'll very rarely find a retouching tutorial that'll start at the beginning of the image and take you all the way through the end. It's just how do we work on this, or how do we work on that, right? So you kind of have to put all these pieces together into some sort of workflow that works for you. And that I think is a really difficult thing, because everybody has their own way of doing things, everybody has their own style. And it's really in the nuances, I think, in retouching that makes that big difference.
So you're working in the computer sciences field. Your photography skills are getting better. When do you cut the cord and say, I'm done, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be a photographer? At what point did you reach?
It was honestly 2 months ago, maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, very recently.
Yes.
All right.
So no, I was doing it, as much as I could, and you kind of get to the point where you realize you can't really do one or the other as well as you should, and then I kind of had to pick. So.
Were you scared?
Yeah. Nervous, but no, I'm so far glad I did it.
It's a big thing to do, without question. And back in the day when I did it, you apprenticed for somebody for 3 years or 4 years. You're working in a photo studio, and then you finally had to make the decision, I am not going to assist anymore. I've got to do this. And it's a very difficult transition, and I would imagine going from one career to another is even more frightening.
It is, yeah. Because you just kind of, not to mention you've got a steady paycheck, and then you're kind of venturing out into the unknown.
I don't think it was that unknown for you, because one of the things that's kind of interesting about you is you have 3 different avenues. You're a photographer, right? Yep. You're an instructor, but you're also a professional retoucher.
Right.
So you're kind of working 3 ends of the market all simultaneously, and it's all kind of blended into this one package. So talk about how you balance that and how you've developed those.
It's tough to balance it actually at times, because you always try and with photography, it's not like what's going to happen next week, right? You get an email and you got something and you got a shoot or whatever. So everything has kind of an opportunity cost as well, right? Do I want to take on this retouching job or not? It's going to take me a long time. Is something else going to come along? So I think it's just a balancing act between establishing rates that make it worth your while, so that if you're doing one, you don't feel bad about giving up another. And that's really all there is to it. It's about finding a balance, but it just takes time, right? At the beginning, you just kind of hope for the best. You know, anything that comes along, you take it. And then I think you become a little bit more selective as you go.
Well, I've told people for years when they've asked me about getting in the business, one of the things that I've always said, become really secure with insecurity. Meaning on Monday, you don't often know what you're going to be doing on Friday. Things change, and sometimes you can, you know, land a gig and something else wants to shoot right on top of it, and you can't do both. It's like, wait a minute, I need to do both, but you can't. So
that's right. And you don't want to overpromise to anybody either.
No, and that's something that is really dangerous, right? And have you run into those issues? Have you thought, you know, okay, I'm going to deliver this to these people, but man, I don't know if I really can?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's periods where I just find that you have too much work and you just feel burnt out by the end. So it's probably something I'm trying to avoid at this point, because then I just feel like I'm not delivering the results I'd want to be delivering. Right. So yeah, I'm a little bit more careful to try not to get in that situation.
Well, I'm going to tell you something that I think is going to make you very successful that you already have. And I hope if you're out there looking at Michael's tutorial, you really pay attention to this. You're extremely relaxed. Extremely relaxed, particularly for some.
Even though in my mind it's, you know, going.
Well, you know, if you're pooping bricks, nobody knows it. You've done a really good job of you know, containing that and keeping it calm. There have been so many photographers that I've known that really kind of run with their emotion and let everybody feel their tension, and they get angry and they throw stuff, and the whole shoot goes to crap when people feel that tension. You know, to be a professional photographer, you have to master your skills. You've got to be confident in what you're doing, and you've got to really be relaxed. You've got to kind of run the show and be relaxed. Is this something that's just natural for you? Are you always a pretty calm person? Are you hyper in your personal life somewhere else?
Yeah, I'm pretty hyper. I mean, my wife always tells me that I'm all over the place. Yeah. So, you know, I think it's just, I think you slowly come to the realization that not everybody, like nobody gets it perfect out of the gate. It's a process that you have to go through. Nobody expects it to be perfect out of the gate, so like don't feel bad if the image doesn't look good right away. And just believe in yourself that you're going to get there. You know, you just kind of have to try and think through, what do I need to do, and just play around and get there. So
yeah, that's really the key. You know what? Nobody is perfect, and you make mistakes. There are things. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I still I'll think, all right, I'm going to try it this way, and it doesn't work. Yeah. I'm not going to feel bad about that. I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn from it and adjust. And you know, if you freak out and you're emotional about it, everybody gets tense. But if you're like, all right, that didn't work, let's move on to the next thing. It's good workflow, and you've got that. I think it's really going to serve you very well over the course of your career. So you've been doing this for about 3 years. Where do you pull your inspiration from when you're thinking, okay, my next shoot is going to be a beauty shoot? Where do you start to look for inspiration?
I think it's usually a combination. I mean, usually look through magazines or you know, just look around the internet and see what looks interesting. And usually it is a collaborative process between myself and a makeup artist. Usually I have like 2 or 3 makeup artists that I work with on a fairly regular basis. You build that trust, you build that kind of rapport that you know that this person kind of sees things the same way that you do. And that's something we kind of talk about with the interview with our makeup artist here too, is that, you know, everybody has their own style and everybody, you know, has a look that they're going for. So when you find people that you kind of gel with, I think that helps a lot. So that's usually like how it goes. You know, I'll have kind of an idea, or I'll get a model that's been sent to me. The agency will say, you know, this girl's in town, would you like to photograph her? And so I'll kind of say, yeah, you know, she looks interesting, and I'll try and build a look around that. And we go back and forth with the makeup artist. You know, Pinterest is actually a pretty good resource for that kind of stuff. There's a lot of new stuff coming in there. If you look at sites like 500px, I find it's a little bit hard to define what you're looking for. It's just a lot of different things mixed together, primarily landscapes and things of that nature. So Pinterest I find is good for just a wide variety of content, just using the search options and just following lots of boards.
It's good to hear you say print too, that you actually do look at magazines, because that's really kind of falling off the radar for some people. Do you have a couple of go-to magazines that you like, or some things that you would recommend to people that are watching if they want to look?
Yeah, I mean, I look at, there's one really good magazine that I like. It's actually a Canadian magazine. It's called Zinc. Yeah, can you believe it?
No.
Printing good stuff.
I can believe it.
Yeah, so it's called Zinc. It's a fashion magazine, but it's primarily centered around editorials. So it's like, you know, there's not that much written content. Like there's some interviews and things like that, but for the most part, it's just fashion editorials. And those are pretty interesting. It's just nice to see kind of what's current and, you know, what's trendy. You always have to be careful because what's showing there is essentially what's already been photographed. So you have to kind of, you know, find a middle ground. But really for me, I just try and pull some sort of, I guess, style references or maybe some ideas, and then you kind of build on that or take in a different direction. So it's just nice to flood your eyes with lots of visual content just to see, what you like and what direction you want to take things in. So
I still do a lot of tears. I go through magazines and tear stuff out, but not only do I tear out things I like, I tear out things I hate. And one of the reasons I do that is, one, probably I'm going to go after that client and try to improve what they do. But I think it's really important to see what's out there that you don't like, and then kind of figure out why you don't like it. Because sometimes it's hard when you're going. The thing about photography, it's a quick read, so we wind up going very quickly. And sometimes you're not exactly sure why you like something and why you don't, which is part of the power of photography. It's that quick, that instant, it just kind of grabs you. And I think it's really important to slow down. And in that sense, I think the printed material is really nice because it makes you slow down a little bit, look at it, and think about what you like and what you don't like. Are there fashion photographers that you follow? Are there people out there you think, man, that guy's really got the goods? He's solid or she's solid.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite is Gavin O'Neill. He does really nice work. I mean, it's like a commercial fashion kind of set of images, but it's really nice. I mean, he's got a mix of beauty. He's got like fashion studio images. He's got a lot of like swimsuit and that kind of stuff. But I always find that his retouching is always flawless. I don't think he does his own. I think he probably hires somebody to do it. But it's always very consistent, very nice, and just the look of his images draws me in. He's got a lot of sort of the things that I'm drawn to. So I like his work, and although it's not fashion related, I like Eric Almas. I think his work is fantastic.
Eric's amazing.
So every time I see it, it just always inspires me, because he has that great blend of the landscape and the people, and he always tells a great story. So for me, it's a lot of images a lot of the things I guess that I like, that I'm drawn to in his work, and just the light quality that he has. That kind of early morning light or the sunset, just always feels perfect.
Eric's got some great things going. Color. Composition, without question, and concept. His concepts are really solid. So, inspiration, you're looking around for inspiration. How do you come about your concepts? Or is it the same thing? Is it simply, looking through a magazine and getting an idea, or are you thinking about things that you see in everyday life and movies? Where are you drawing from in order to say, I got to convert that into an image?
It depends, again, what I'm trying to get at. I mean, if it's an editorial for fashion, generally, it's going to be kind of a mix of, okay, this is the model we have and this is the kind of things that she could pull off, and then I try and throw in some sort of guidance, whether it's a color or whether it's a particular theme, and then kind of go back and forth with the stylist, because really I don't know that much about fashion. I try and kind of keep up with what's current, but ultimately, as far as what's available, I kind of rely on stylists for that. So
do you spend some time talking with them and saying, okay, bring me up to speed? Because there's a whole language that stylists have as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just interesting. You'll even see from the interview we did here with the stylist, you'll kind of get an idea of how they actually get the clothes, because it varies by market, and I wasn't aware of actually how they got them either. So it was kind of interesting to see. I had an idea before this, but I think a lot of people are just confused by, where do they get this stuff? So,
it's a little bit of searching, begging, borrowing, stealing, and usually using the photographer's credit card. So make sure you have good credit. Oh, funny. So you're talking about editorial, doing editorial spreads. How have you gone about getting yourself in front of magazines to get that work in Toronto?
Basically the best way to do it is to start just by, shooting editorially more than anything else. I mean, if you have a good model, just try and build an editorial, because you're already there shooting. I think a lot of people, when they start out, they just say, okay, I'm just going to shoot 10 looks, have them completely different, so it looks like I've shot 10 different things.
It doesn't work when it's the same model 10 different times.
No, not really. But sometimes you'll actually, when you start out, you'll also try and get 3 or 4 models in the day as well, and just try and take advantage of the day, shoot as much as you can, make it look like you've shot lots of different stuff. And once you kind of get going, you just slow down and decide, rather than quantity, let's just go for quality, and just build that story and just submit it. There's so many publications out there that, you go online, you submit the work, and see what happens, and then obviously, the more times they accept your work, eventually you can kind of get commissioned to actually do submissions as well, and that helps too when you're actually requesting models or stylists or makeup artists, because that guaranteed publication makes a big difference.
It's patience. You got to get in front of them a few times. And
and
let
then
it build.
After a while too. I mean, ultimately they'll reach out to you as well, because they'll see the work. They're out there looking at things, and when the stylists are posting it, I mean, social media is actually pretty good for that. That when the agencies start posting the work and things of that nature, I mean, all of these magazines are following the agencies or the stylists. So it's good to get that work seen.
One of the things I noticed about you, every time a model walked in the door, you immediately knew what was going to work and what wasn't going to work with her. So I would love to get some expansion from you on what you're seeing when these models walk in the door for other people, to really learn from. Like, what is it that you're looking for? Because I think one of the strengths of a good photographer is having the ability to size or, honestly objectify people very quickly. What features are good, what features aren't so good, and how to play off of that. So what are you looking for? What do you see?
Yeah, I think, I mean, you can call it shallow, I guess. I don't know. I mean, that's unfortunately kind of the industry we're in, but and it's nothing personal. It's just that generally the people that are looking at your work expect the same kind of thing. So it's not something that I've made up. It's just kind of what's expected in the industry. So for me, I find that the best models are usually the ones that have a good personality to begin with, even though it may not seem like it, because really we're just photographing somebody. And
but it's a relationship between you and the model for even a short period of time. And if they're not friendly and they're not stiff, you guys are never going to develop that relationship.
It's hard to build that rapport and have the model trust you and know that you're going to take a good photo. And I think that's one of the most important things. I found that the best results are from the models that you're able to kind of get into a nice rapport with. And regardless, I try not to judge it right off the bat. If I'm like, oh, this person's a little bit quiet, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You try and kind of engage with them, but it happens occasionally that you can't break through to a person, and that it becomes difficult because ultimately. I think that really makes the big difference between like a pretty good shoot and a great shoot is when you get that something extra out of the model, and I think that just comes with trust. But but that's kind of below the surface, I guess. Superficially, it really depends what you're shooting too. Mm-hmm. So if you're shooting beauty, I mean, you're really focused on interesting facial features. So you're looking at really long neck or defined cheekbones or jawline, and sometimes it's actually like something weird about that model that's interesting. So models, I find that the best ones are typically ones that just have something that some would consider a flaw, but it's not necessarily. So, and I think that just adds character. So
I think it's actually something that in a way you almost have to exploit. And I use that term in saying that you need to kind of highlight, like if they do have a long neck, or if there is a feature about them that's interesting or somewhat kind of chiseled in a certain way, you want to light that and accentuate it because it makes them unique. It's part of what makes people beautiful is their unique qualities, right? It's pretty interesting.
And then, I think when it comes to fashion, it's really just kind of seeing how people move, because I find that just is kind of reflected in the way they're going to be posing as well. So it's a lot of different things. I think that just again comes with just working with a bunch of different models, and you reflect on what worked really well in the past and what that person was like. And so I think just in the back of your mind, you instantly kind of read people. And I think that goes all the way back to when I was doing interviews, at software development. I could kind of read people when they walk in and just say, is this person really going to work or not? You really know a lot about a person within the first couple of minutes.
Yeah, there's no question. That's something that's very true about this business. When you're working with people that you don't know, sometimes you're assembling a team, and a lot of that team can be made up of people that you've never worked with before, and you've got to very quickly sum them up, or figure out how to play your game on their level. And it's about building that quick rapport.
Because it works with just makeup artists, stylists, everybody, right? Everyone.
Assistants, everybody on the team. It's all the same thing. It's this kind of gelling. It's all got to happen. When you're a new photographer starting out, you really generally don't have the pick of the litter in terms of working with the best models. You're more than likely also going to get the newer models, which means that they're the least experienced. So what kinds of things helped you overcome that kind of newness for everybody, overcome that barrier and kind of break through and build a rapport? Is there anything that you can share with other people on how you assess people kind of quickly and get the new model to relax?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is just start small. I mean, don't start by doing an editorial fashion shoot, because then you really need the posing to be strong and you need everything to look really good. So start with something like the portrait look, because that one, you're really focused on expression and things like that. You're not really worried about what's going on, with hands and feet and overall composition. Really, it's just about framing the face and then getting the expression out of them. So you start small until you're at least comfortable with shooting, so that you're not focused on shooting and posing and everything all at once, because it becomes a little bit overwhelming when you have to think about, how am I going to light this? What settings do I have to use? Am I going to be able to make it work? And all that kind of stuff. It's just too much to think about. So I think unfortunately, that's just the nature of the business, is that you just have to keep practicing until you're gradually comfortable with different things.
Yeah, it's the nature of it. It's not so much that it's unfortunate, it's really the nature of it. And I think that people get frustrated with it because digital is so instant. But when you think about it, if you start with the portrait and you work on just kind of minute direction, where you're dealing with tight facial expressions and chin up, chin, just little tiny things, that's going to translate in how you direct the whole body, and you're going to start to see the whole body as a form. Because that's one of the great things about fashion photography. People who do it well have mastered how to direct the expression of the entire body. It's not just a facial expression; it's a full body expression.
Right.
I think those are the most successful fashion images.
I mean, generally with fashion, if you're doing a fashion editorial, it's really the pose and the clothing that's going to really drive things. So, when you start shooting editorially, it's the stronger the model, obviously the better result, because they're going to know more as well as to how they can pose to complement the clothing. You're not going to be guiding them as much. So that being said, when you're starting out, you're not going to get those models. You're going to, and it's sort of unfortunate, I guess, because the people that are starting out are the ones that need the better models the most, because it's just one thing off your chest.
Well, the models starting out need the better photographers too, right? It's a catch-22.
Exactly. So the good thing is, though, when you get the newer models, I mean, the expectations are lower too, right? That's why people also have to realize that you don't want to start with the best model. You don't want to start with the best makeup artist, because then the pressure's really on you, right? I mean, you have to deliver, and same thing for the agency. You don't want to waste the agency's time. They sent you a model that they'd normally charge $3,000 a day for you to shoot, and then you send them garbage. So you don't want to burn any bridges, but if it's a brand new model, the agency oftentimes all they want to do is get her in front of a camera and get her some experience, right? So if it doesn't work out, I mean, it's not the end of the world, right? Just you have to practice, start small, and so keep the risks low.
Have you had some that have not worked out? Like, have you gone, oh, that shoot just should never have happened?
There are,
or not?
No, I mean, when I look back at my early work, if I knew what I didn't like about it back then, I would say that those were disasters, right? But we don't know what we don't know, right? So at the time, it seemed like everything was good. So there are shoots that I feel better about than others, but generally, I've never kind of walked away and said, "Wow, that was a total disaster." I think they've gone relatively well.
Have you had models that have been really difficult to work with?
I haven't had models, most models that I've actually worked with have been pretty nice, despite I think what a lot of people think. I mean, obviously if the model's like huge, they maybe become, prima donnas or something like that. But all the models I've worked with have actually been pretty good. I mean, the odd time you get ones where they're just not maybe as personable as you'd like. It's kind of hard to break through and carry a conversation with them. You start asking things and it's always like one-word answers. So you just try and persevere, you try and keep the attitude light. Like, try not to get offended, because ultimately if you start to close up and, get frustrated, then it just makes the situation worse. So you just try and stay upbeat, have a makeup artist that's fairly positive. Just get some music going and, try and get people as relaxed as possible. And just
about having fun.
You can, yeah.
I mean, you gotta have fun during the day.
Exactly.
Do you have a favorite model? Like, is there kind of a go-to person that you're like, yeah, she's kind of my muse? I could, not that you want to use the same person over and over, but is there someone that you've really connected with photographically?
Yeah, there was one girl actually who was just starting out, and she was maybe, I think, like a couple months in, and she just, she came in. She was really great personality. She was just really grateful to be there. Just a lot of fun. And she was a younger model too. I think she was maybe about 15 or 16, and she just nailed it every time. She was just, on point, just doing exactly, kind of almost reading my mind as far as what I wanted from that shoot. So I haven't worked with her since. We've actually been kind of hoping to work again this summer. She's been doing some traveling now because I guess, the agency obviously picked up on the fact that she's good at what she does. So they've kind of moved her up the roster, and she's been busy lately. But yeah, I mean, the odd time you get that where you're just like, wow, that was great. So yeah, it happens. I mean, it's a varying field, of what you're going to get. So you have to just expect that. It's not always going to be great, and it's not always going to be bad. You just have to kind of roll with the punches. And if you have a great model, take advantage of it and do the best you can to get a really fantastic shoot. And if you got a model you can't break through, well, you just, again, do your best every time and try and deliver the best images you can.
On a normal shoot for you, not obviously Tutorial's a little bit different, but on a normal shoot for you, how many images are you trying to get done in a day?
Well, it depends, I guess, again, what it is. If it's beauty, then it tends to take a little bit longer. I find that hair is kind of the thing that will dictate how many you're going to be able to get, because makeup is pretty quick. You know, usually makeup artists, unless they're doing something super intricate, within like half an hour, 40 minutes, usually you can kind of take all the makeup off and put a brand new look on. But when it comes to hair, you know, there's been shoots where I plan, okay, we're going to start shooting at 10:30, and like it's noon, and we haven't even started shooting because the model came in with frizz out to here, right? So the makeup artist spends 2 hours just trying to tame that and get the hair looking good. So that's usually, I find, one big factor you have to watch out for. So for beauty, I mean, we usually, as with any editorial, we're going to try and aim for at least 4 or 5 looks. You don't really want to walk away with less than that, because you can't really submit it if there's less than 4 or 5 looks. With fashion, you can get through a lot more. Generally, there's less makeup changes in between. So with a fashion editorial, you don't have to have a different makeup for every single look. I mean, you can if it's part of the story. But again, they're going to be minor changes. You know, you maybe change the lip color or eyeshadow, and then the clothing changes are really fast. So at that point, usually it's like 7 or 8 I can get through in an 8-hour day. And again, you don't want to change the lighting too much either, right? So with editorials, you want that look to be consistent. So I might, you know, shoot the first look and say, you know, I think it'll be a little bit more interesting if we move the lighting a little bit more this way, or we make it a little bit contrastier. So, you know, I'll make some minor tweaks as I kind of refine through the editorial, but I'll generally, once I've really dialed it down, I just kind of stick with the lighting I have, and I just kind of knock it out one after another, because you don't want a completely different look. It's going to look like you shot different things. And with beauty, it's the same thing. You know, if you're going with hard light source, just stick with that. If you're going with clamshell, stick with clamshell. Don't start, you know, mixing things around. And
well, it also shows your style, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you're doing so many things, you're kind of all over the board. But if you are doing variants of a similar thing, you really develop your style, and then you can kind of know what you like and what you don't, and it gives you the ability to kind of jump around.
Right, and you want that variance too, though. I mean, it's not like you always want to shoot with hard light. Like, you want to use soft light when it tells that story, but just know you don't have to do it in one shoot. You know, again, it's kind of more about telling the story rather than trying to get lots of different looks and showing people, wow, look at all the stuff I can do in one day. You know, it's just carry things through, and then on the next editorial, focus on maybe hard light or soft light, or how you're going to incorporate that look. So, and it makes it easier for you too as a photographer. You know, once you've kind of dialed it in, you know that, you know, for the second look, third look, fourth look, you focus on just getting posing looking great, or expressions, and just focus on minute details rather than just readjusting everything and trying to figure out your exposure again.
Hairstylist is somebody that's really important.
Yeah.
Really important.
Very.
Because hair's a nightmare.
It is.
If it's frizzy and screwed up, and on the retouching side, that's a huge nightmare for you.
It's terrible.
So I assume you rely pretty heavily on your hairstylist, particularly during the course of the shoot, because you're concentrating on the lighting and the expression. Is there a point where you want a stylist to step in or not step in? Like, do you want them to tap you? Do you want them to walk into the set and just do it? You know, photographers are different, but what works for you?
For me, I personally don't mind them just stepping in. I mean, I'm not like a, you know, spray and pray kind of shooter. I generally, you know, I prefer to just take my time, you know, recompose, give it a minute. So there's usually going to be a period of time between the shot where the makeup artist can just say, you know, just hang on one sec, let me just fix something. So I don't mind them popping in and fixing anything. I mean, ultimately, even if things are going great, if there's something really messed up with the clothing, then the image isn't going to work, right? So I'd rather you interrupt me, fix it, and then we carry on. Same thing with hair. I mean, it depends on what it is. I mean, if we're just on a hot streak and everything's going well, and there's like one little hair sticking out, then I probably would prefer if we just, you know, carried on and I'll kind of deal with it. But you know, if there's a major issue, then I prefer to just address it, save me the trouble in retouching afterwards. So I would say, you know, that's something you should establish with the stylist and makeup artist at the beginning too. Just let them know, you know, what your preference is. Just say, if you notice anything, feel free to jump in and just let me know that, you know, we need to fix something. Just be upfront with everybody, and it just makes it all easier.
Yeah, it's how you guys all as a team find your pathway to make it work and work together.
And that's why, again, it's nice to work with you know, a similar group of people. You
Absolutely.
have like a small circle that you work with.
Right. You guys get into a groove and you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
One of the things I noticed about the way you were working, you know pretty quickly when you have the shot, and you don't shoot 400 or 500 images on every pose. And you know, older photographers like myself, certainly we did that in the film days, because you never knew what you got. Right. It really seemed like you kind of limited yourself in that. I don't know if limiting is the right word, but you didn't like go crazy shooting forever. You felt really confident when you nailed it, and then you moved on. How long did it take you to get to that process, and when do you know? I mean, is it just, that's it? I don't need another one?
Yeah, I think it's, you can kind of see it in the viewfinder, because I know at the beginning that at the beginning we're focused on lighting. So I'm trying to get the lighting and the exposure looking good. And then after that, I tend not to check it too much unless we make a change. So, if I've got the model standing a foot away from the background, and I move her, 3 feet away from the background, then I know I have to adjust that stuff. But generally, if she's in the same spot, I don't just keep checking, making sure everything's looking good, because I know that exposure-wise, it's going to be fine. When we're shooting tethered, obviously it helps you just kind of peek over, make sure everything's looking okay. But
shooting tethered is great for the whole team too, because they can all see it and they can notice right away what's going on. When you're just shooting to a viewfinder, the stylist can't see what you're doing at all.
Yeah.
Which makes it hard. So shooting tethered is a great way to go.
Yeah, and so as I kind of go through that process, once the lighting is down, then you kind of have to see, because sometimes the things you expect to be better aren't necessarily the case. Sometimes you think, okay, I expect that the model should be looking to the left and it's going to be better. And I actually had that on some of our shoots here where, I had her just, turn to the right just to see how this looks, and kind of said, okay, that looks pretty good. I actually like the way those shadows are coming out. So usually when they make a change like that, then I'll just check to see whether that's kind of going in the right direction, and then I tend to build from there. So it's like, let's find the right foot position or leg position that looks interesting. And then once I have that down, let's kind of make some variations with the hands or the expression. So I find it's just a gradual process where if you spot something that you like, just make minor refinements from there as you kind of get to the end. And I find once you have it, there's no point in shooting too much more, because if the image looks good and you know that, yes, that fits the story, the posing looks strong, there's just no point in shooting more, because then it's just more stuff to go through afterwards. And
you know what the other benefit of? Photographers have worn models out. Particularly shooting roll after roll after roll after roll. The old photographers promise of just one more roll, or this is the last one. This is, and some photographers will go on forever. And I think it's actually really refreshing to only shoot maybe 50 shots.
Yeah.
And know you have it. The model doesn't get worn out. They can go, they can change, they can come back. You can get more done in a day. And I think people are still engaged and refreshed by the fact that you are not just working one pose to death and going, oh my God, come on, every part of me is cramping.
Yeah, well, that's just it. You have to respect the model too, and understand that they are working hard. It's not easy to get in front of the camera and to do all this stuff. And when you have an editorial and you're shooting 9 looks, if you got to shoot 100 or 200 frames per look, model's doing a ton of posing up there, right? So that's the thing with editorials. You just, for every look, you only need one good shot. So again, a benefit of shooting tethered, really quick to just fly through and just make sure you got it, and just take a break. I think a lot of people, when they start out, they think if they're looking at the photo, it makes you look unprofessional, that you don't know what you're doing. You should be kind of getting it, but that's not it at all. I think the model likes the break. She doesn't mind just kind of relaxing for a bit as you go through and check. And
well, you're analyzing. You're looking at what works and what doesn't, and making decisions based on what you're seeing, and then you react accordingly.
So just slow down. You don't have to shoot like crazy, and I think it comes with instinct too. As you kind of get there, when you have that shot, and sometimes you just see it instantly too. It's like, yes, that's exactly what works. So
yeah, it's great to see that and know it. And at the same time, if you've got it, then it also gives you the ability to maybe work a little bit more. Like, okay, that's it. We have a little bit of time. I feel great about this. Let's maybe push it and see what else develops.
Yeah,
because photography is surprising. You never know what you're going to get. Right?
That's right.
It's one of the beautiful things about it. Like when you thought she should look to the left, and then she looked to the right, and it was, oh, that's better. Yeah. Even though you think you don't always know.
No, exactly.
It's just nice. It's a surprise.
Experimentation's good.
I want to talk a little bit about your website and the images that you put up there. I think it's really kind of interesting what you have, because it's segmented into people and landscapes. Your landscapes are really strong. It's an interesting thing to have kind of paired up there at the same time.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your landscapes. What you see when you go to new cities and why you're shooting them.
I don't know. I just find that it's nice to kind of take a break sometimes and just look at something different, because some of the things that you do are very different too, right? In studio you're controlling your environment pretty well, whereas there you're just kind of taking what you got, and it just allows me to, I find, experiment a little bit about with things like blending multiple exposures and just seeing like how far we can just push those images. And what can we do in Photoshop? I found that a lot of people that I teach, I sometimes relay some of the concepts that we do with architecture or landscapes into people retouching, and they're a little bit surprised. They're like, "Oh, I didn't know you could do that." But it's a well-known technique when it comes to landscapes or architecture. So, some of the principles really just kind of transcend those genres. So for me, I think it's more just, it's an interesting kind of creative process, and I find it's nice to take that break. I almost find that retouching people and photographing people is like my profession, whereas architecture, and that's just like kind of my hobby. But it's just kind of, I'm still developing my skills as a photographer, but just doing it at the same time in a less stressful and kind of more relaxed way. So.
It's interesting what doing another discipline in photography will do for your main discipline. I shoot food and beverage, but I also do a lot of interiors. And I find that, one, getting out there and working in a different way with your cameras and your tools, it makes you think about your cameras and your tools differently.
That's right.
And one of the things that I saw in your work when I was looking at the architectural stuff, there is a structure, obviously, to the architecture that you're reacting to. And you're finding the sculptural form, and you're looking at that structure. And I also kind of see that in the way you're handling faces. There's kind of a structure to that, and there's a relationship between those two. I think that's a really good thing for people to kind of work with, is looking at a different discipline and kind of running with it, like really getting into it a little bit and saying, okay, you know what, my main thing is fashion and people, but I'm going to go out and I'm going to shoot architecture as well, because there's something that I'm going to take from that and put it in my back pocket and learn from it and find a way to use it in my people photography.
Yeah. And you don't want to spread yourself too thin. I mean, you don't want to be doing 30 different things.
No, that's why I said pick something and go
something else. And also, just obviously from a business standpoint too, you should really focus on one main thing. I mean,
absolutely.
if there's something that you start to kind of develop on, that's fine too. Like I think food and beverage and architecture, they're kind of tied in, because sometimes you get a job that incorporates the two, right? So it's good to have it, but you just don't want to be the guy that does everything kind of. No. Okay. So
you never want to be the jack of all trades, master of none. Never.
Have your main business, and then everything else, the hobby, and just kind of use it to develop. But I can't really say I enjoy one or the other more, but I just find I'm somehow drawn more to people.
Yeah. So now that you've been in the business for a while, and things are kind of taking off, where do you see yourself down the road? Like, have you looked and said, okay, in a year I want to be here, in 3 years I want to be here, 5, 10 years? Do you look that far down the road?
I don't think I look 10 years down the road. I mean, I try and make kind of 1 or 2 year plan. It's hard to make those plans because, again, things change so quickly. Like a year ago, I wouldn't have imagined that I'd be doing as much teaching as I do now, right? And it's something I really enjoy. So at this point, teaching, retouching, and photography are all kind of even for me. So it's difficult to say like where the road will take me, but I can't imagine giving up any of them. So obviously that keeps me busy, but at the same time, it also keeps things interesting. So and when it comes to teaching, the great thing about it is I've learned so much just by teaching. You learn from the people you're teaching, and you learn when you're doing the teaching, because when you have to cover something, you really want to make sure that you know it and understand it. So you end up studying it a little bit more, I think. And
I think that's the best part of teaching. It's a give back. Yeah. You actually get back a ton from it, which is really, it makes you learn more.
Yeah, so I think, in 2 or 3 years, I think just, pushing for more commercial work when it comes to fashion, just more publications, and then, in terms of retouching, whether I'm going to do that as, a profession remains to be seen. I love retouching my own images. Retouching other people's images is a little bit different, though, because you don't have that attachment to the image, right? When it's yours, you were there from start to finish, and you love seeing the evolution that image goes through. With somebody else's image, I mean, obviously you don't know what kind of image you're going to start with, too, and so whether you're going to be able to create that look that, you're drawn to, you may or may not be able to. I mean, I generally try and restrict myself to jobs where it's going to fit my style, because if they're going for something that I know I can't really deliver, then I'd rather just not take the chance, right?
Yeah. So they shouldn't have hired you for it.
And that's something that you really have to decide too, because retouching is a time-consuming process. It's not where you start and it's like half an hour you're done and you move on to the next thing. It's it can take 7-8 hours to complete an image, and it's a commitment, right? Because that's 7 or 8 hours that you're not working on your other business. Absolutely. And so you really have to kind of make that decision and decide where you're going to focus.
To most of the photographers that hire you to retouch their work, are they directing you, saying, okay, this is exactly what I want, or are they kind of saying, okay, Michael, this is the kind of vibe I'm going for, create a look for me?
It depends. I think like some photographers are a little bit more controlling with what they want to see. I mean, there's a good range. Some photographers will just have you work on skin, and then they'll kind of put their own color grading on it. Others will give you some sort of general direction, or maybe like a reference image to work off of. And others are just like, here's an image, just take it however you want to. So I think that also comes with the photographer's experience as well, because just knowing what I know as a photographer, I would want to make sure that there is that consistency across my images, right? So I think retouching is such a personal thing that if you leave everything to the retoucher, then your images are going to be the style of the retoucher as opposed to yours, right? So I think, if you are actually deciding to hand off your images, I would say give as much direction as you can, give at least a lot of reference images, or just learn how to do the color grading on your own, and obviously we're going to be doing a lot of that in the post.
That's a really valid point. Know what you want and direct the retoucher. There are a couple of photographers, one in particular I can think of, his style is really his retouchers. It's truly not his style. And I think he's going to be in big trouble without his retoucher.
Exactly.
If you were ever to lose that guy, so definitely you need to know what you want and be able to convey that and kind of work back and forth with the retoucher.
And that's why it's good to learn how to retouch as well. I mean, it's you don't have to, you can't always do it. If you're going to get really busy as a photographer, you don't have the time. So eventually you're going to have to hand that off. But I think if you have a foundation in it and you know what's involved, you can first of all tell whether the retoucher is actually doing a good job for you and pick up on problems and whether you need a new retoucher or not. But also just color grading is not something that takes forever. It's really the tedious things like hair and skin that you're going to spend a lot of time on. You can color grade your images in a couple minutes. So that's kind of, I think, where you really put a unique stamp, and you'll be seeing in the post-processing where we actually will spend a ton of time doing dodging and burning and things of that nature, and then the color grading, like the group of adjustments that we have in the color grading, you turn that on and off and it makes a dramatic difference, and that's like maybe 5% of the total retouching time. So
when you're working on an image, how much of your time do you think you spend in the photographic process, and then how much time is spent on it in post? Is it 50-50? Is it 85 in the actual production?
Again, I think it depends on what you're shooting too, right? I mean, we're going to see here with the tests that we're going to do as little retouching as we can. Because
Beauty's going to take a lot more.
Yeah, beauty's going to be a lot more. So beauty and editorial are going to be spending a lot of time. Portraits and tests, it's going to be, the ratio is going to be a little bit different. So I would say maybe it's like 70-30 for shooting to retouching on a test, and then maybe the other way around for something like editorial or beauty. Beauty for sure.
So Michael, it's really been a pleasure to have you here and to work with you over the last few days and to sit down and talk with you and watch you work. Is there anything else that you feel like you want to impart to the students before they sit down and dive into this tutorial and watch it all?
I think just knowing that when after you watch this and you kind of get out and start shooting, just take the knowledge and just know that it's going to take some time. I think a lot of us expect that we're going to absorb all this material, we're going to get out there and right out of the gate it's going to look awesome, but it's still a process. I mean, you have to take the techniques, infuse that with your own style, and just practice, because it's just a matter of developing your eye to spot those things.
Right.
So
I'm going to give you guys a piece of advice. Watch the way he handles himself on set throughout this entire tutorial. The relaxed manner, the understanding of what he wants to do, and the calm way in which he conveys that to the entire crew. It team builds, it gets everybody on the same page. You really did a fantastic job, and I think you got a bright future ahead of you. So.
Appreciate it.
Great to see you.
Been great being here.
Yeah,
Thank
great.
you.